We are joined for more on this by our correspondent, Aditya Wadhwan. Aditya, what can you tell about this? This is Marco Rubio's first trip out of the US. What can you tell us?
Well, Tom, if you see, this was quite obvious that it had to happen, because Trump was very vocal during his election speeches. Also, he had repeatedly said that he would take back the control of the Panama Canal. And let us just put this into perspective for viewers, like how the China has been operating near the Panama Canal. What has happened through a Hong Kong-based company? The Hong Kong-based company was operating two ports at the entrance of the canal, at the entrance of the Panama Canal, which was, anchoring the Donald Trump and what has happened, the Trump administration. They've just some days back they have, they have taken charge of the country, and now the Secretary of State Marco Rubio has, threatened to impose to initiate action against Panama. If the Chinese presence is not zero, is brought down to zero. However, the Panama president has maintained that the sovereignty of the Panama Canal won't be challenged, and the Panama has the sovereign right over the Panama Canal. But now it needs to be seen, because as soon as the meeting between the U.S. Secretary of State and Panama president, the deal involving the Panama Canal with China has ended. So this is very obvious that the pressure of the United States of America is there on Panama. Yes, back to you in the studio, Tom.
Thank you very much, Aditya. For more on this discussion, we are joined by Ambassador Suresh Gul, former diplomat, and Professor Madhav Nalapat, editorial director of The Sunday Guardian. I'm going to come to you first, Ambassador Gul, and I was wondering, does the US really have any legal entitlements to tell Panama what to do with its canal?
I don't know. I really don't know whether USA will be able to enforce its own will on Panama through legal channels. To my mind, it's a bit doubtful. I think the ownership of Panama Canal, when it was transferred to Panama, that was the kind of an irrevocable act, and the sovereignty of Panama on the canal is well established. The point here is not the legal picture here, or the legal framework. The point here really is that in case USA wants to put pressure on Panama, what options does Panama have, or what can Panama do? Now, it is quite clear that as a matter of discussions between Secretary of State Rubio and Panama leaders, they have at least done one thing. They have decided to get out of the BRI agreement with China. And if, from what I hear about the ports at the start of the canal, is they are operated by Hong Kong company, and if the allegations of China actually using that leverage with other countries is concerned, it is rather a risky proposition. And obviously, Panama has acted on the concerns and sensitivities of the USA. All I would like to say in the end is that Trump believes in muscular diplomacy. He has promised to use all kinds of leverages that he has: political, economic, strategic, everything. He does not seem to believe in international law in this respect. So let us see where it leads to. But if it does lead to reduced Chinese influence on the global politics and the regional metrics, I think I would personally welcome it.
Professor Nalapat, how much control does China really have over the Panama Canal, and what does the US want to change about the way that Panama currently controls it?
Well, the fact is that China has and is in the process of abandoning a chokehold over the Panama Canal. And let me point out that Secretary Rubio has to consider, as a responsible diplomat in the United States, the possibility of a kinetic war between the US and China. And of course, that has to be taken into account by other democracies as well, because the Chinese are extremely expansive and aggressive. So from that point of view, having Chinese control anywhere near the Panama Canal would be a disaster. I mean, whether it's the Panama Canal, for example, same kind of pressure is being brought on South Africa. South Africa went to the International Criminal Court of Justice against the State of Israel for having taken action against Hamas, which is a terror organization, a very odd thing to do, and clearly working under the influence of quite possibly the same country, China. So whether it's the South China Sea, whether it's the Straits in Indonesia, and frankly, from the Indian point of view, from our point of view, the Hambantota port and Maldives, I mean, these are locations, frankly, that we need to reduce the Chinese presence to zero, because in case a kinetic conflict breaks out, and that cannot be ruled out, then it is going to be a very serious matter to have Chinese sitting there. So I think Trump is acting preemptively. Before a war starts, he's clearing the way so that China cannot make any unpleasant surprises. The same thing you'll see, I mean, the Suez Canal also, the South African coastline. These are all essential waterways. The South China Sea, essential waterway. So these essential waterways have got to be subject to the law that Ambassador Goel was talking about. And let's be honest, the Chinese recognize no law at all. In fact, several times the relevant international agencies have given verdicts against China, and they have obeyed them not in the slightest. They have dismissed them as waste paper. So that is the respect they have for international law. So having said that, I want to say that this action against Panama, from the US national security point of view, is, in my view, very justified. And I think other democracies need to look at what they can do to protect themselves, because we cannot rule out the possibility of a kinetic conflict with China in the future.
Ambassador Goel, I wanted to come to you on this next one. Panama has said that there is absolutely no chance of the US taking over the Panama Canal, whereas Trump has not ruled out military action. Do we think that it could be possible that the US does, in fact, use military action to seize the Panama Canal?
You know, having been witness to the action taken by the USA in terms of tariff and in terms of continuing with Greenland demand, etc., I do not know. I mean, despite the advice from the other, and even within his own country, the way people have been removed from the post in the aid department and so forth, I don't think there is anything that can deter Trump from doing what he thinks he should be doing, whether it is in accordance with law or not, and that includes military action. Quote unquote, he's not going to back away from it if he thinks it's necessary. The point really here is, if he resorts to these kind of actions on more frequent basis, the other countries could also do so. And then we will have the whole global descend into chaos. So I think we will have to wait and see what he does. Possibly, I hope that it does not get to the extent of having a military action necessary in the region, and that the things resolve in a more diplomatic manner.
Thank you very much, Ambassador Goel and Professor Madhav Nalapat. We have unfortunately...